2011, complete withdrawal of US troops from Iraq. 2014, reinstatement of US forces. 2021, partial pullout of American soldiers. Cut to 2024. Iraq still struggles with the dilemma of United States-led military coalition forces having bases in the country. Over the years, governments and administrations changed.
ما في خصوص الجانب الأمريكي في الجولات الحوار السابقة تعهد الجانب الأمريكي بسحب عدد مهم من قواته من العراق.
By January 15th, 2021, our forces, their size will be 2,500 troops.
But both US and Iraq still find themselves facing this decades-old question. For the US, the dilemma being whether to completely withdraw troops from an important territory in the Middle East amid rising tensions with Iran and its allied armed groups. Iraq, on the other hand, wants to assert its sovereignty by getting rid of Western influence and military presence, which is seen as a threat by its close ally Tehran, as expressed by former Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, who died in a helicopter crash this year.
معتقدیم حضور امریکایی‌ها در عراق، در سوریه، در افغانستان، در منطقه به هیچ عنوان امنیت ساز نیست، بلکه مخل امنیت منطقه است. هیچ جا حضور امریکایی‌ها امنیت ساز نبوده و نیست و نخواهد بود. هر جا امریکایی‌ها حضور پیدا کردن، منشأ شرارت و فتنه بودند.
Now, recent reports suggest that Iraq wants troops from the US-led military coalition to begin withdrawing in September and to formally end the coalition's work by September 2025, with some US forces likely to remain in a newly negotiated advisory capacity. A Reuters report citing 4 Iraqi sources and US officials says the Iraqi position is being discussed with US officials in Washington this week at the US-Iraq Joint Security Cooperation Dialogue. However, there is no formal agreement on ending the coalition or any associated timetable yet. This was partially confirmed by the US State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller, who, during a press conference, said that both sides were meeting in Washington this week to determine how to transition the US-led coalition's mission based on the threat posed by Islamic State, adding he had no further details.
So I don't want to get into it in detail. We'll have a statement that comes out after the meeting, but we do remain committed to the higher military commission process that began in August. I think, as you know, that process is to determine how the coalition's military mission will transition based on the threat from ISIS, operational and environmental requirements, the capabilities of Iraqi security forces, but I don't have any further detail to give on.
That's fine.
The US currently has around 2,500 troops in Iraq at the head of a more than 80-member coalition that was formed in 2014 to help the Iraqi government defeat the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant or ISIL and the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria or ISIS. They are housed at 3 main bases, one in Baghdad, one in Western Anbar province, and another in the northern Kurdistan region. It is unclear how many troops would leave if a deal were to be struck. While Iraqi sources cited in the news agency's report say they expect most soldiers to eventually depart, US officials suggest many may remain under a newly negotiated advise and assist mission. Iraq sees complete withdrawal as a necessity to achieve security and stability in Iraq.
انتهاء مهمة التحالف الدولي ضرورة للأمن واستقرار العراق، وأيضا ضرورة للحفاظ على علاقات ثنائية بناءة بين العراق ودول التحالف الدولي.
However, US officials are keen to have some military footprint in Iraq on a bilateral basis, in part to help support its presence across the border in Syria, where it has around 900 troops. Amid Israel's war on Gaza, US forces in Iraq and Syria have faced frequent attacks by Iran-allied groups, resulting in US retaliatory attacks and Iraqi complaints of US aggression against its territory. US bases in Iraq and Syria have come under more than 100 attacks since the start of the Gaza war on October 7th. Iran-allied armed groups behind the attacks targeting the US military have said that they are acting against America's diplomatic, financial, and military support to Israel's relentless attacks on Gaza. Kataib Hezbollah, part of the Iran-allied umbrella group that claimed the January 28th attack on a US military base in northeastern Jordan, which left 3 American military personnel dead, announced its decision in January to suspend operations against US forces to prevent what it says embarrassment of the Iraqi government as it negotiates the complete withdrawal of US-led coalition forces from its soil. Meanwhile, Iraqi officials have complained that the US air attacks violate its sovereignty. Since ISIL lost its hold on Iraq, officials have called for the withdrawal of coalition forces, especially after a US airstrike in January 2020 killed Iranian top commander Qasem Soleimani and Iraqi militia leader Abu Mahdi al-Mohandes outside Baghdad airport. Earlier this year, Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani said, "The reason for the presence was to confront ISIS." Today, the security situation, according to the testimony of all specialists in Iraq and friends, ISIS does not pose a threat to the Iraqi state. However, there are concerns about Islamic State's ability to regroup. The jihadist group was declared territorially defeated in Iraq in 2017 and in Syria in 2019, but still carries out attacks in both countries and is on track to double its attacks in Syria this year compared to 2023, according to the US military. The group and its affiliates have also in recent months carried out attacks in Iran and Russia, as well as in Oman last week for the first time. While the coalition's mission is to advise and assist Iraqi forces in the fight against the Islamic State, Western officials say the US and its allies also see its presence in Iraq as a check on Iranian influence. The US and Iran have long been using Iraq as a proxy while competing for regional interests. It has been a seemingly perpetual battlefield caught in the tension between the US and Iran, with the Israel-Hamas war only worsening the situation for Baghdad. Amid the growing threats, the Iraqi government, with its limited authority, can only hope and try to contain the situation, writer and researcher Ali Akbar Darini told Al Jazeera. Iran has taken an active role in reasserting political and financial influence on Iraq, and the two, despite tensions, share a bond that is deeply grounded in history. The US, in the meantime, had played a dominant role in Iraqi politics up until 2011, when then-President Barack Obama withdrew most of the American troops. Meanwhile, Washington and Baghdad initiated talks on the future of the coalition in January this year, amid the tit-for-tat attacks between Iran-allied armed groups and US forces. An agreement to draw down the coalition could be a political win for Prime Minister Shia al-Sudani, who has been under pressure from Iran-aligned factions to push out US forces, but has sought to do so in a way that balances Iraq's delicate position as an ally of both Washington and Tehran.